Hey, what's going on? It's Tripp from trippadvice.com. I'm here today with a special guest, Mr. Patrick King from Patrick King Consulting. Now, Patrick, I'm going to show off a little bit for you. You have a number of best-selling books on Amazon in the Kindle section, and you have just been killing it with these books. People love it. They're getting so much information. You write for guys, you write for girls, and you talk a lot about social anxiety. You talk a lot about networking, socializing, things like that. And I'm a big fan, man. You got great stuff. We've already done a podcast together. It's so fun talking to you about this stuff because you really know what you're talking about. So happy to have you back.
Thanks, man. Glad to be back. So many compliments. Like I don't even know what to do.
Well,
It's
dude,
yeah.
I,
Thanks a lot.
I, I only I only interview people who I respect and like. I don't just throw anyone on these videos. So yeah, man,
Yeah.
happy to have you. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about you first. Tell us your background for the guys who don't know you, and then we'll get into some cool tips.
Okay. Yeah. I guess the Cliff Notes version is that I used to be a lawyer. Um, kind of a lifetime ago at this point, and I started by writing profiles for guys because I had found one of my ex-girlfriends now. Through online dating on okcupid, if you're curious about which site. So the free version. So I did that for about 15, literally 15 to 20 people. And by the end of that point, I was like, I have a pretty good system here. I've written, tons of messages. I've seen thousands of profiles. I know what works, what's going to get a date, what's going to get a reply, what pictures are good, things like that. So, I put that all into my first book a while ago. And at that point, I started coaching more, and I eventually branched into date coaching, date designs, and then now I'm kind of skewing more towards social skills, conversation skills, charisma, these sorts of things. So, but it all falls under the umbrella of connecting better with people, talking to people, and just becoming better friends and being more likable.
That's awesome. What do you think is one of the biggest questions you get in terms of how tos? Like, what are people asking you, guys or girls? I'm just curious. Like, what do you think is the one that you get over and over and over? You're like sick of hearing already.
It's the simplest. It's probably the simplest thing that you can think of. Is just what do I say in this occasion? What do I say in this occasion? I don't know what to say. I've run out of words. I've run out of things to say, and it really is just. I mean, it works on two levels, right? You're in the present where you have to really think about it, and then in your head where you're like you have to separate yourself and collect yourself and be calm, and so you can not just blurt out words. It takes a little bit of practice, but actually, that what a nice segue into what we're going to talk about a little bit today with like improv skills and how they basically are about connecting with people.
Awesome. It's funny. I definitely have given that tip out to people myself, telling them, go to improv classes because it really helps with being able to kind of come up with things to say on the spot, hence
Right.
improvisation. But I've never done it myself. I'll be honest with you. I never ended up doing it myself. The way that I ended up getting better at conversation personally was going out and practicing it with people, which I think anyone should do on top of that. The reason why I didn't is I was never against it. It just when I was learning this stuff years ago, it's
Yeah.
like I didn't even know that that was something you could do. And then finally, when I started getting better at conversation, I heard other people talking about like, oh, I'm going to improv classes to help with conversation. I'm like, wow. I'm like, that's an amazing idea. Like that's got to help so much, right?
It kind of makes yeah, it kind of makes sense, right? Well, when you break it, and I have to admit right now that I've only been to a handful, and then but at that point, my mind was churning on all the similarities. So the reason I think that people think it is such a helpful tool for people that are learning how to socialize and talk to people and get out of their social shell is that improv and basically conversation they have the same goal. So the goal is to create a good interaction, right? Just an interaction that people enjoy that makes them want to, that flows really well and that people want to continue. So in improv, you want to create the interaction for the audience, but with conversation, you want to create it, for the parties involved, you and your conversation partner. So what improv does is it puts you in these crazy situations that you wouldn't encounter in daily life, but that's kind of what happens in life, is that we're in situations that we run out of things to say just because we haven't encountered them before. So it gives you a lot of practice on how to reply, what to actually say to things that you don't have any idea to, and just how to think outside the box when you're talking to people. And that's like a big question I get too. It's like, man, how do I move past this super boring, super generic, just super small talk that you have with
Yeah,
like a
just
girl on like a
plain
month.
uninteresting. Like
Yeah,
I just feel like if you as a guy, if you're bored in conversation, you can almost guarantee that she's bored. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
totally.
Exception being she's talking your ear off about something really excited and you're like, I don't care about this. At
Yeah,
that point, you know, it's not going too bad. But yeah, man, that I think guys got to think about that. If you're bored, they're probably bored. So I
yeah.
guess let's move into one of your tips. Like, what do you think a guy can do to be able to make conversation a little bit more interesting? Or, let's say he's talking to a girl and he's like in his head and he's like, okay, I'm like stuck. This is so boring. Like, what am I supposed to do right now? Like, what do you think that guy should do?
Yeah, okay, so there's a few things. I think one of the things, just like taking a step back, is that one of the finer points of improv comedy is that you want to make yourself as easy to talk to as possible. If you can make the other person just comfortable and, put the burden of the conversation on yourself and make it so that they don't really have to think that much, that's going to make them want to talk to you more. So that kind of leads directly into one of the first points that I want to make, is that when you ask like a really broad, open-ended question, like "What do you like to do for fun?" That who has an answer for that on like a daily basis in their pocket? That just makes here's what happens. You ask that, and then they go like, "I don't know. I like to work out and watch Netflix." Something generic. So then it just takes a conversation in this generic direction that you're both parties are gonna hate.
Yeah, because if you ask a generic question, she'll give you a generic answer, and then you're going to be ping ponging back and forth with this generic stuff. Because where are you going to go with the conversation when she's saying something to you that's as generic as the question that you just asked? It's going to be like you're making it harder on yourself. You think it's
Right.
easy because it's so easy. What do you like to do? What do you like to do for fun? But with that type of question or statement, you've just doubled the workload on yourself.
You double the workload on both of them, right? So, and then another one is like, to tell me about yourself, or like, what do you like to do for fun? What are your hobbies? What are your passions? These are all terrible questions to ask, women and people and women in general, just because they make the other person pause, think. It takes them out of, both of you really, out of the present, and just like imposes this awkward silence that's hard sometimes to come back from. So what I would say instead, and this is kind of a golden rule of improv comedy, is that you should, instead of asking a broad question, make a specific statement. So either they can confirm it and then elaborate, or they will deny it and then elaborate on it. And it gives the conversation a direction.
Right. So, what do you
Yeah.
think is a good, like, if you had to come up with something right now, like, what's a good, more specific type of question to ask someone who you're talking to?
Um, I think talking about what they're, like articles of clothing or what they're doing, if you can't think of anything situational, is a good way to go with it. Like, instead of asking about where they got their outfit, which is like whatever one word answer, say, "You got that at so and so, didn't you?" Or like, "Did you get that on sale at the Nordstrom annual sale?" So it's a much more pointed question that gives a much more clear answer, that is a much more direct answer.
Right. And makes it easier for them to, I mean, there's not much to think about I guess the more specific you ask, there's not as much to think about.
Yeah, and that's
Right.
the goal sometimes, is just to make, if you feel like you're having a hard time with, talking to someone, maybe it's because they find you a chore to talk to.
Right.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I feel like just to kind of hammer in your point here, it's like imagine you're asking someone what their favorite movie is, right? Like that
Yeah.
is somewhat of a specific question. Of course, there's so many movies, so someone still might have to think about it. So it's like let's take that even further. You could say, "What's your favorite scary movie?" Right? Then that narrows it down. That's a little bit easier. And then you can even go as far to say as, well, what's your favorite scary movie from the 90s? You know what I
Nice.
mean? Or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's like, guess just hammering in your point, the more specific you go, the easier it is for them to answer. But also, I feel like, tell me if you think this is true. Like, the more
Mm.
specific you go with a question or a statement, the more interesting it happens to be. Like, how much more interesting is what's your favorite scary movie from the 90s versus what's your favorite movie? Not saying that that's
Yeah.
the best topic to talk about necessarily, but just as an example, like, it's a little bit more, you know,
Yeah, it's
just
more
specific.
interesting. There's more details, and there's just you'll always get an explanation with a specific answer. Elaborating why they think this way instead of just something like, yeah, I like to, as I said, I like to travel, eat food, and like watch watch Netflix or something.
Yeah, yeah,
Very general stuff.
yeah, very
So
general stuff.
yeah, so
Cool.
that would be the first thing that kind of the biggest mistake that I see with people in general, like at a networking event, right? It's like, so what do you do, or where do you work, or have you been here long? It's like, come on, you don't really care about that, so why are you asking me that?
Right, right.
Yeah,
Yeah, see that's a good point too. It's like why you like people will think like why are you asking that? Like you don't really care. You must come off very inauthentic when someone it's like, do you really care about that stuff? Like what kind of question is that? Like you know what I mean? Like, we
right,
just met.
right.
Cool. What other tips you got up your sleeve?
Okay, this is probably one of my. Oh, this is definitely my favorite one to talk about because I think it's just, to me, it just feels like a cheat in your head, and it's like so good at for like the people that run out of things to say and
Yeah,
are silent sometimes. So I don't recall if I've talked. No, I don't think so. So it's the rule of HPM. I don't think we talked about this, did we?
I've never heard about
Last
this.
time?
No.
Well, maybe. Okay, good. So HPM stands for history, HP, philosophy, and metaphor. So this is kind of another golden rule of improv comedy.
Okay.
So if you run out of things to say, you can draw on one of these three things: history, which is your personal relation to the topic at hand; the philosophy, which is your feelings, opinions, values regarding the topic at hand; or metaphor, which is what something makes you think of, or what the topic at hand makes you think of, reminds you of, things like that. So, like a real quick example that I like to give is like puppies, or puppies are always a good example, right? So we do H with puppies, and that's going to be something like your personal history, so a personal story, right? So, oh, the last time, yeah, I love that puppy. The last time I saw a dog, or I dog sat for my friend last weekend, and you take that direction.
Hmm.
That's a good way. And then with P, you go with the philosophy. So that's going to be something like how you feel about dogs, what they make you feel, any thoughts or opinions, right? So, oh man, I love dogs. I had one when I was younger, or I hate dogs. The one across the hall from me barks incessantly, at 3 a.m.
Yeah. Or like my
And
favorite dog in the world is like a bulldog, something like that.
there you go. That's that. Yeah, yeah, it's good. And then finally, so metaphor, and then this is just kind of this is more of an like a Mad Libs thing than the other ones, because it's kind of, you just plug in like, oh man, that dog or puppies make me think of X, and it doesn't really have to be like a very, if any, causal link between the two, but it's just that's basically the direction that you're taking the conversation in. So, man, puppies remind me of kids. Maybe clear link there. Puppies remind me of like that last time I was on an airplane. Puppies remind me of something. Puppies make me think of something. Puppies are like something.
Right.
So,
Right.
these are three very you know, good places to take conversations, and they work. And I think HPM works really well because literally everyone has it. So, like, if you can't think of anything to say, then and you have HPM in your pocket, then I don't know what to say.
Yeah, no, I mean it's like at
Like,
that point
yeah,
you have something. One of the ways that I've taught conversation in the past was basically saying to guys, whatever topic comes up, it doesn't matter if you know about it or not. You'll always have something to say regarding it. So like, just give me a noun or person, place, thing, anything, and I'll kind of give an example, like anything in the
Chi-
world.
Chicago.
Okay, Chicago. So, um, So I live in Chicago right now, so I know a lot about it. But let's just say I've never been to Chicago. Let's just say I've never even heard of Chicago. I don't even know what you're talking about. Like that's a foreign word to me.
Yeah.
Okay? I can just ask you, wait, what's Chicago? Or
Right.
where is Chicago? Right?
Right.
That's just if you've never heard of it before. But you probably have. So you'd be like, oh, Chicago, I've never been there before. Have you been there
Right.
before? Like, what's it like there? Oh, you never
Right.
been? Okay, we totally have to go together, right? And then just kind of, that's a little flirt you
Nice.
could throw in. But
Right.
the whole idea is it doesn't matter what you know or what you don't know. There's still an avenue into being able to continue the conversation. And I like the HPM because that is a way more specific. And hey, that's what we're talking about
That's what
here.
we're talking about.
It's a
Yeah.
way more specific way of helping guys kind of through that avenue of being able to make a statement or ask a question regarding the topic. That's awesome, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, everyone should have some sort of. You probably have some story, or your friends have some story about. We'll just go with puppies again. With puppies, you have to have some kind of feeling towards them, like negative or positive. And if you don't, it's like, well, if you don't, I'm not sure how you come off in conversation. You just probably come off like kind of milk toast and bland if you don't take opinion or take a stance, right?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. This is good. All right. I think we have room for one more tip. You got something for us for the guy who's watching right now that can take away and use in conversation, or something
Yeah,
that
man.
you think works really well for guys in terms of being able to hold solid conversations?
I think, yeah. So improv comedy is a performance, right? So you're but it's a performance that's not scripted. It's obviously improvisational. Yeah. So it's you're depending on your teammates, your conversation partners, to basically try to give you softballs, and you have to see all the signals that they're sending out so you can connect on them or you can react to them. So basically the lesson here is you need to shut up a lot of the time, and when you shut up you need to listen. So it's like when you're shutting up, your job is not just to like not talk. Your job is to be as observant as possible to see all the signs that they're sending out.
Yeah. Awesome. And then with that, then what? Then the guy has or girl has a way of being able to get the signals to continue the conversation, or know what to say next.
Yeah, kind of. It goes into a lot of directions, right? It's when you shut up and you're observant, you can see exactly what they're trying to convey emotionally. Because we talk about things that are important to us. We talk about typically it's important to us, but it's typically because it's made us feel something, or it makes us react in some certain way. So when you observe, you can kind of cut through the clutter sometimes, or a lot of the times, and just see what someone's actually trying to say and get to the heart of the matter instead of kind of beating around the bush or not getting their signal. So in a sense, this is going to make you seem like really perceptive or astute, or like kind of like a mind reader sometimes, when all you're doing is just like, they keep talking about this. So why don't I ask them about this? Or, they kind of glazed over that topic. I'm going to ignore that. Or, they find this really funny. Why is that? Let me ask about that.
Right. See, that's good. That's a whole level even further than just continuing the conversation. You're not just continuing it to continue it. You're continuing it based on something that you know is important to them or is emotional to them. And when I say emotional, I don't mean bad, but good or bad. It arises a lot of feelings inside of them. And so if you bring that
Yeah.
up, it's like an easier way of connecting with that person. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And let me put it to a more actionable thing, because that's a little more abstract, I guess. Just whatever people are giving you when you're observing, just react to everything that they're giving you. React verbally, react non-verbally, because chances are that you're not. Chances are you kind of have a poker face, and when someone doesn't react to you, and it's like talking to a wall, it's like really confusing because you don't know if they heard you or they understood you and just chose not to respond. So react every second as much as possible.
Yeah, nodding your head like I've been doing this whole time, like
That was
nodding. Yeah. Mm-hmm,
I think
mm-hmm.
this guy understood me. Yeah.
Right, right, exactly. That's
Yeah.
great. Awesome, man. Well, listen, if you're still watching and you want to learn more about these techniques and type of improv techniques to continue a conversation, then I want you to check out the guest blog post that Patrick has written for the TripAdvice website. So you'll see that as an annotation here on the screen. Also, I'm going to put links for Patrick's stuff below so you can check out, again, that's patrickkingconsulting.com. So check out his ebooks. They're like cheap too, man, and they're like $1, $2, $3, and I always wish you'd charge a lot more for them because the value inside of those are just amazing. I mean, you've heard some of the stuff you talked about today, which are just huge. So yeah, go check that out. Go check out the blog post. Patrick, thanks for joining us once again and sharing some of your awesome knowledge.
Always a pleasure, Tripp.
Thanks, man.